before it, House Bill 557. Good gentleman from 10.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent that the good clerk refrain from reading this good bill.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there objection? Hearing none, so ordered. The good gentleman has the floor to present the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before you is House Bill 557. I have to wax eloquent on it a little bit because there's been a lot of discussion on it. This bill passed well at 13-3 out of the Local Government Committee with a recommendation to do pass. This prevents local government entities from enacting ordinances that impose anti-discrimination requirements beyond those in our state law. This legislation would preempt burdensome local ordinances and from bringing these regulations into alignment with our law that have caused a lot of problems. At one time, Idaho had 13 cities and one county that had passed these SOGI ordinances. SOGI, what's that? Sexual orientation and gender, whatever, identity. So they passed these with good intentions, but they have unintended consequences that have hurt people and caused confusion, and that can lead to a lot of litigation. I see the good man from 28 having trouble hearing me. Are you having trouble over there hearing me? Oh, okay, I got to lean into the mic then. So at one time, 13 cities and one county had this as an ordinance, and Ada County rescinded theirs after trouble just this last December. San rescinded theirs, so currently out of 201 cities, we have 12 cities that have these SOGI ordinances. Local anti-discrimination ordinances are sometimes weaponized against small businesses. That was not the intent of these cities when they passed these, but that's what has happened because it goes against people's sincerely held religious beliefs when they're forced to participate in some events, such as we know the stories we read in the paper about the bakers, the photographers, the wedding venues, and they have to violate their sincerely held religious beliefs if they're going to comply with these SOGI ordinances. At a public hearing, we heard from a Christian wedding venue owner in Coeur d'Alene, where, believe it or not, in Coeur d'Alene, if you sincerely believe that you cannot do, say, a gay wedding, where a man marries a man or a woman marries a woman, because that's your biblical belief or your religious belief, your church belief, you can go to jail. The prosecutor, he testified, told him, we're going to shut you down. And he got him some lawyers, and through a legal loophole, he was able to keep his business open after closing it down for a few days. That business had been in Coeur d'Alene serving weddings for 90 years as a Christian organization. It's called the Hitching Post. And an example of a closely held religious belief is what marriage is. So that doesn't mean everything that a SOGI ordinance covers, but that's the one that comes up often. Baked into the majority of faiths in Idaho, in American history, in Western civilization, in our national religious history, and in the Idaho Constitution, is that marriage is only for a man and a woman. A Treasure Valley woman who has a photography business was approached by a lesbian to do an event, and that photographer said to herself, I can't do this. This is against my church belief, my Bible belief. It would be a sin for me. These thoughts went through her head, and then she was faced with the Meridian City ordinance that could lead to the lawsuits like the cake baker we've all heard about in Denver, who that case started in 2012. It's gone round and round in different ways. It's still in the courts, even though he prevailed, that cake baker, in Denver. But it's still going. And that was a weaponized situation of a SOGI ordinance in Colorado. She's thinking of those things. That woman should never have to choose between her faith and her business. Can my business survive? Yeah. She shouldn't have to do that. I'm going to give you a couple of other examples as well. It's simply wrong that somebody should be faced, your business or mine, and I am a retired businessman, should have to face that decision. When we have these things that are important for our freedoms already covered in our state law and in federal law. We heard testimony from a man in Sandpoint who's the mayor, and he told us about the confusion that came about because of their SOGI ordinance. And it came about when a woman who was working at a swimming pool, a private club swimming pool, walked into the women's restroom, and there's a fully naked man showering. Now, she'd been through an incident where she was, excuse me.
Would the gentleman like to object? Is that what we're hearing here? Because we don't want this stuff. For what purpose do you rise, good gentleman? Good gentleman, just a second. State your concern clearly so we can all understand. We're going to keep order in here.
I object.
Will you state your objection, please?
Speaker said it was a fully naked man. That's been in the newspaper. It is not reported that way. I wasn't there, but that certainly has not been in the press that way. Thank you.
For your concern, continue, good gentleman, Tim.
Thank you, good representative. Mr. Speaker, as testified by the woman who was in our committee, there was a naked man using the showers at this facility. She called the sheriff's office for help. She had previously been a victim of a sexual crime, and this bothered her greatly. She also contacted her employer, talked about that at this place. She contacted other people, and they said, we can't do anything about it because of the SOGI ordinance. If a man is in the women's showers in their private places for women, and he identifies as a woman, we can't do anything about this because we're going to get sued. We're going to get in all kinds of trouble. So the mayor, who rather liked the SOGI ordinance in many ways, said we had to get rid of this. We didn't want to deal with the litigation. But still, we need to protect our women's private places. You know, in the old days, we had flashers, men in trench coats that happened here in the city. I remember back when I was a prosecutor, show up in the park, they're naked under their coat, and they flash people. Well, now if you are a flasher, you can go to the women's restroom or to the women's showers and just say, I identify as a woman. We must protect our women's spaces, and this bill does that. Again, that's an unintended consequence of these SOGI ordinances. This bill, by the way, does not interfere with local control. Every city or county in this state possesses only the authority that the state delegates to them. The Idaho legislature has already established a comprehensive anti-discrimination framework for the state, and local government should not independently meddle with that framework. This legislature passes laws every year that I've been here that put boundaries on state and local governments. And I think of when we had the bathroom bill issue. We had a lot of schools having issues, boys and girls locker room, vice versa. They were making a hodgepodge of rules in the different school districts, and it was a mess. This body came in, passed a law, and leveled it out across the state. And many school districts were thankful for that, so they didn't have to deal with it because it would be the same all across the state. This law requires the uniformity. It protects against discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, or national origin. Federal law in the U.S. Supreme Court prohibits workplace discrimination based on SOGI. So if you hear somebody say, well, I can't get my job because I'm being discriminated against because of my LGBTQ status, that's not true. They're protected by federal law, and this law that we're asking you to pass today does not interfere with that. Under this legislation, all employers, including local governments, may still implement their own anti-discrimination policies in compliance with Title VII. Now, hang with me a little bit. This legislation does preempt the burdensome local ordinances, bringing them into alignment with the state law, protecting religious freedom and removing unnecessary red tape for businesses and employers. And that's why I'm asking you to give this your green light.
Further motion, is there further debate on the motion? Good lady from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate.
Good lady has the floor.
Thank you. Good body. I'm going to talk briefly about something that the good gentleman said there about the Idaho case. I have to assume that if there were many cases in which Idaho businesses were hindered by NDOs in those cities, that we would have been presented with them in the 3+ hours that we heard testimony the other day in committee. However, we were only given one case, an actual legal case in Idaho regarding an NDO, and that is, of course, the case of the hitching post. Now, upon examination with the owner of the hitching post, it became clear that it had nothing to do with Coeur d'Alene's NDO. In fact, he admitted that the Alliance Defending Freedom called him after the gay marriage case came to an end, the Oberfeld decision was upheld, and asked the hitching post if they wanted to be part of a test case, not related to Coeur d'Alene's NDO, only related to a Supreme Court decision. So if there had been more cases, I'm sure that we would have heard them. Now, to what I've passed out to you today, I want to talk a little bit about Idaho values and Western values. There's an old adage about Idaho. For a state that doesn't like government, it sure has a lot of it. And I say thank goodness. So have you ever wondered why us conservative states in the West have so many taxing districts, commissions, municipal, county governments? It's because decentralization is the principle we live by. It's the way of the West, and it's the Idaho way. Listening to folks in the majority in my home state talk about supreme authority of the state, of consolidation of power, arguing for merging districts and agencies, eliminating districts, and stripping cities of their duly elected leaders of power is like a fever dream. If we are truly worried that Idaho would fall prey to the urban majority rule, as many of our neighbor states have done, this is literally the worst thing that we could do, removing local power. This kind of law makes statists and communists salivate. There is another analogy that my parents taught me, is to consider what happens if you are no longer in the majority. By centralizing power, we are taking away a future opportunity for Idahoans and Westerners to stand up and say no thank you to centralized authority. It might be a different group of people someday, a billionaire class, land barons. And without the protections of local rights, without the adage, don't tread on me, we fall prey to the same issues that happened in the states around us that we constantly say is the fear that we don't want to come to fruition in Idaho. And so I ask you to go with your gut on this. What is the long-term effect of voting for a bill that says cities serve at the pleasure of the state? Yikes. That is the least Idaho thing I have ever heard. I urge you to vote no.
For the debate on the motion, good gentleman, 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
On the floor.
I like this bill. I think it's essential. In listening to the hours of testimony, we were given a lot of fear narratives and hypotheticals to distract away from what has already happened, that we are watching the trampling of people's right of conscience, an essential of the First Amendment. I also find it ironic that many that are using the overreach of government, city, state, whatever, are the same that were calling for masks to be put on our babies on airplanes, or vaccines, forced masks, forced vaccines, all these other things. This is to be able to preserve the ability to obey your conscience, and I see this as it has been used to attack people of faith. When I went into Target, I'll give you an example. When I went into Target and I saw the shirts that said, I don't know, Satan loves pronouns or whatever, I went straight to my lawyer and I said, let's sue them. Oh wait, I did not. I told my wife, we're not shopping there anymore. We could use the power of the purse. It's free marketability. They offended me, I'm gonna go someplace else. I'm not gonna use the strong arm of the law or the city and tell them, you need to put them out of business. They don't belong here. This isn't about acceptance, this is about dominance. And I just see this as setting the record straight. We cannot abuse or impose the will of anything against our faith community. And I think that's an essential. So I'll definitely be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
For the debate on the motion, gentleman from 11.
To debate in favor of the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen of the body, I had the pleasure of sitting and serving on the committee where this bill was brought forth. And I listened to the testimony the other day from many people on both sides of the argument. And there's one thing that I think has to be established and reaffirmed. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prevents discrimination of all of the objections made by people who feel like they would be discriminated against based upon their sex or their gender identity or potentially their race. We still live many, many years and decades later underneath the protections of the Civil Rights Act. Additionally, constitutionally, in Article 1, Section 2, it reads of the Idaho State Constitution, just to clarify, all political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for the equal protection and benefit. They have the right to alter, reform, or abolish the same wherever they may deem it necessary, and no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that they may not be altered, revoked, or repealed by the legislature. And I feel that constitutionally it is our duty to ensure that the law and the Constitution is upheld and applied equally to all, including the business owners, that yes, there is a documented case here as presented in Idaho, but we've seen it across the country by other noted cases. And in accordance with Article 12 of the Constitution, the legislature does have the ability and the duty and the power to ensure that laws are uniform and uniformly applied. And any anti-discrimination laws that are adopted or codes or ordinances that are adopted at a local level should not be allowed to remain, so that equal protection is applied to all, regardless of their affiliation or whether they are business owners or just private peoples and entities. So I will be supporting this bill. Thank you.
For debate, the gentleman from 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to debate against the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
First off, I see this issue as overreach and a real threat to local control. I was notified of the incident in Sandpoint. I think it was October. I have the email from the lady that reported it. I did not reach out to speak with her. I didn't think that was appropriate. I was asked to follow up, and I have. Since then, I've spoken with a number of the different involved parties, swim teams, swim coaches, YMCA people. I've spoken with our Attorney General's office twice. Gone to LSO and asked, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? My overwhelming feedback from the community was District 1 is not comfortable with men being in women's bathrooms. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't believe that's right either. But I want to point out something that really hasn't been said, or not really, but it just hasn't been said. The mayor from Sandpoint was involved in the hearing. I want to commend the Sandpoint City Council. They did the hard work. They didn't come here and say, hey, can you fix something in the hallways here? They did the work. They went out in the community, they had hearings, they had a couple of different evenings where they listened to the community, and ultimately those council people and the mayor made some tough decisions. I think they got it right for their community, and I respect that. Local control is a pillar of our state and our communities, and they did it right within a month. Here we are 6 months later, and we're talking about it. Again, Sandpoint did it right. I really value the people in my district and that they fix things and they do it with a light touch. They didn't ask for some state amendment or a state action. They took care of it. They pulled their bootstraps up and did it. So local control works. That's been proven in Sandpoint. They're not on the list of the entities that we are considering dropping. I just feel like this bill is really using a sledgehammer to kill a fly, and honestly, I don't feel like we need to have a belt and suspenders. We have local control. Sandpoint showed that it worked, and I urge your red light on this. Thank you.
For debate on the motion. Gentleman 28.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. You know, we have a wide diversity of communities across Idaho. There are actually 197 cities in Idaho at this point. There were 201, and 4 have disincorporated because they found that the regulations and requirements of those small communities they could no longer meet. We have a wide diversity of geography, of transportation systems, of economies. We're all different. And I think it's wrong to say we're trying to pass this bill to make a uniformity of laws across the entire state. If that were the case, there would be no need for county commissions or city councils or school boards. We could do it all from Boise. And I don't think that's the right way to let our citizens determine their own future of their own communities and local government. And for that reason, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
For debate on the motion, good lady from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to debate against the bill, but I rise to provide this body with a bit of good news.
Good lady has the floor to debate the bill.
The good news is economic news about this city, about Meridian, about Idaho Falls, about Coeur d'Alene, about Pocatello, about Lewiston. What do all these places share in common? They've made decisions on a local level about how they would like to govern their cities. And one of those decisions has been enacting these non-discrimination ordinances. In these places, they have been enacted from 2013 to 2015. They've been in place for a real long time. And as the gentleman to my left, actually both of them have pointed out, we have mechanisms in our local government to change our leaders and to change the laws that govern our local communities should we wish to do so. And Idaho has a very strong tradition of independent, small government that responds directly to the needs and wants of our local communities. Yes, I'm talking about local control. Now, here in Ada County, which is where my district lies, District 16, the economic driver of the state sits here. As of 2023, this county's GDP was approximately $43.1 billion. This means that we have the #1 ranking of GDP among Idaho's 44 counties. But that's not to mean that our other counties aren't contributing equally. In fact, in southwestern Idaho, we have the largest region with about half of Idaho's population in the civilian labor force. That accounts for Ada, Boise, Canyon, Gem, and Owyhee counties. Southwestern Idaho is full of highly diverse and has a strong connection to industry, agricultural sectors, and all forms of manufacturing, from semiconductors to recreational trailers to cheese and frozen potato products. Here we have some of the largest employers in our state: Micron, JR Simplot, Idaho Power, Albertsons. And I believe it is best that we leave these important decisions about our local communities to our local communities, because what it results in is success
Good gentleman, 25.
for
For
our
what purpose do you rise?
county.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to object. We're not supposed to be reading speeches on the floor.
Good point, good lady. We can't read our debate. We have to tell it. So if you're reading, I'd encourage you not to do that. Continue with your debate, please. Thank you.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure I got those economic figures right, because I think it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate on the motion? Hearing none. Late 33.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to debate the bill.
Good lay has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, I want to add a couple of perspectives that I don't think anyone else in this body has except me. So when I was first running for the City Council in 2013, this was a big issue. And it was coming forward to the Idaho Falls City Council. And then it seemed to be rolling. But there were only, there are three legs, right? We have the employment, housing, and the non-talked about public accommodation. As it was being pushed forward, everybody pushing it only addressed employment and housing because they wanted us to believe that somehow those of our friends who are LGBT would be kicked out of their housing or removed from their employment. Now, mind you, we're an at-will state when it comes to work, but nobody was losing their job. And housing, there were like 20 federal laws protecting housing. Nobody was getting kicked out of their housing, but you see, it wasn't really what was important with those who came into our state to push this issue. What they really wanted was the public accommodations. So they dealt with these two. The public accommodation is the part that makes it very difficult to protect our First Amendment right, particularly to freedom of religion. That's what public accommodation does. It raises rights that I would say are not there to usurp a person's deeply held religious beliefs. While we are arguing this, meaning amongst my friends trying to go forward and to talk about it, I kept going back to our First Amendment rights, and it's almost like these national groups, like they're dismissing that until they realize that's the argument. It's our First Amendment rights. Now, I had the privilege a week ago of addressing the Association of Idaho Cities, and the association definitely were concerned, especially with the speaker right before me, that we have our state that is supposedly impeding on local government. And so when it was my turn to speak, I clarified that. First, let me just say, having also served at that city level, as you're running in the newspapers, they say, city government just needs to remove snow. That is what is said all the time. That's what the city government does. We know they do more than that. But it's just kind of funny how we put the responsibilities of city government over here until city government decides that maybe they want to infringe on state. Now, I submit to you this issue was actually a state issue before the cities decided to take it up. You see, this issue actually was even a federal issue before it was a state issue. That had been tried in its various forms to push this at the federal level, and the federal level rejected it. In 2015, actually it was even before then, but 2015, the state held a huge, hearing with then Chairman Lurcher running that, and I came here to testify. Brought a large delegation from Idaho Falls, actually, where we'd started to meet on this. The state, you see, the state had decided essentially not to take it up, which was, when I say take it up, not to pass the 4 words, gender identity, sexual orientation, because I'd say primarily of that First Amendment and how it would infringe. The state had the time and the understanding and the wherewithal to understand the implications to us. And again, the primary talk was housing and employment. So then what happened is the powers that be went into the municipalities. And again, they did not talk about a public accommodation. So the city of Idaho Falls did something that even as I was running, I supported. The city of Idaho Falls passed 2 of the 3 legs. They passed basically housing and employment, but they didn't pass public accommodations until COVID, when nobody could come testify. And that was very disappointing. So it makes sense to me, as I shared with the Association of Idaho Cities, that no, sometimes you infringe on our areas. And I believe that's important that the state have a uniform stance on this, because it really was the state that took it up. And the state said, no, we do not believe that we should have add the 4 words, sexual orientation and gender identity, that we're all protected equally as man and woman under the rest of our civil rights. And so I submit to you that this legislation is a good piece of legislation. There is history to it, and I think it's important that you understand that history, and I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Is there further debate on the motion? Hearing none, with the sponsor of the bill, good lady from 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To briefly debate.
They has the floor.
Thank you. Just to briefly underscore the comments made by my good colleague from District 16. This is something anecdotally that I hear all the time from my friends in the business world, that it is already a struggle to recruit top talent to this state because we are perceived to be very hostile to the LGBTQ community. And one of the things that they have to hang their hat on when they're trying to get people to come here who are nervous about coming to Idaho because they may be gay themselves, they may have a gay son or daughter, someone in their family, and they are very concerned about, will we be safe in Idaho? Will we be comfortable in Idaho? Will we be persecuted in Idaho? And one of the things that gives them that comfort is that we have these municipal non-discrimination ordinances. This is actually extremely helpful to our business community in being able to recruit and retain top talent, because they can at least tell these folks, you will be fine in the city of Boise, you will be fine in the city of Pocatello, you will be fine in these places, don't worry that there's no statewide protection. And so I think stripping these protections away at the municipal level will send a very hostile message and will, I think, make it much more difficult for the business community to retain and recruit top talent.
Further debate on the motion? Gentleman from 1.
Mr. Speaker, to debate the motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. In retrospect, as I was thinking about this and listening to other debate, I should point out that and I just got permission from them to do it, thank goodness for modern technology. Some of the principals of the city of Sandpoint they pointedly asked me, are you going to do anything about the YMCA issue? And when I said I was, they thanked me and said, then we will be supporting you. And that was part of the reason the mayor gave that testimony at the hearing the other day. Our community wholeheartedly stands behind, I believe, this bill. I have received nothing but, I've received a few emails against, but it's been remarkable how many I've received in encouraging us to pass this bill. And I've received numerous individual communications, including handwritten ones, from people who have been victimized in this same way. I'm a proponent of reactive government, not government that does things first. And this seems to be a good position where government is reacting to what has happened with an appropriate reining in of some of the things that are stealing the rights and privileges of our citizens. So I am in favor of this bill, and I urge your green light.
Further debate on the motion? Hearing on Gentleman 10, care to close?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to close. Mr. Speaker, I was reminded with a text from my wife just now about our friend who owns a dress shop and repeatedly has a man coming in that is very manly, wants to try on the dresses and different things in her shop, and she is frightened of this man, but she's afraid to turn him away for fear of what might happen with lawsuits. By the way, it is centralized authority that gave us the Civil Rights Act that protects the bigotry of race, religion, etc. So it's okay sometimes for this. And again, I've heard testimony from different people about the city of Sandpoint. This bill is brought in large part because of the people of Sandpoint. The mayor testified in favor of this bill, and he's no right-winger by any means. He wanted this bill for clarification. And the good representative from 19 is incorrect on a rendition of the history of the hitching post. The prosecutor threatened the owners that they would be shut down, possible jail time, after 90 years of working in that community. The attorneys came in with a pre-enforcement challenge that helped them, and they only got through because of a loophole that I won't explain here. Many business owners have talked to me and members of our committee saying they're fearful of publicly testifying in favor of this bill because of the fear of retribution or possible legal consequences. I'm here for them, and you can understand, if you're a business owner, why you might want to not come forward in support of this bill publicly, because you're trying to keep your business doors open. Laws such as these have been passed in other states. Tennessee, since 2011, has been upheld in the courts. I was prepared to talk about the law and legal precedents on this. It will prevail if there's any legal challenge. I ask you for uniformity in our state laws on discrimination, to defend women's private spaces, to protect businesses from the ambiguity that these SOGI ordinances have brought. I ask respectfully for your green light.
Thank you. Debate is closed. Question is, should House Bill 557 pass the House? Clerk will lock the machine, and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Blanca? Blanca? Does anybody wish to change their vote? Clerk will lock the machine and record the roll and read the pairs. Excuse me.
Beiswinger votes aye. Matthias votes nay. Hawkins votes aye. Galaviz votes nay.
53 ayes, 16 nay, 1 absent and excused. Majority having voted in favor of House Bill 557. House Bill 557 has passed the House. Correction time.